pleased to announce that we're beginning our rollout of our new time entry and production capture system. Just because UnitsPro has the very best time entry and production capture system in the business doesn't mean that we can't make it better. And just because we're making it better doesn't mean that we're just about time entry. So I want to give you a quick introduction to UnitsPro, and then we'll get into the new and improved time entry that we're beginning our rollout of. UnitsPro has the ability to manage your entire project's lifecycle. We have our reference data, contract data, project design, bid transactions, our project execution, project closeout, project feedback, numerous schedules, billing, the whole suite to manage your project from alpha to omega. We begin with the reference data. We develop your labor and equipment rates. And this allows us to use this as our beginning point on developing pricing for work units. It's also very important to understand that any changes made to these rates in the future will now cascade throughout the entire process and update our unit pricing and lump sum pricing utilities for the future. Once we have this labor and equipment rates developed, we develop crews that are used for specific units, i.e. a framing crew for framing work, a pole setting crew for pole setting work, where the equipment and the crew composites will be different, and we want to price those at a different man-hour rate. So then we get into building our reference data. Everybody has basic units. Here we're demonstrating the basic REA distribution units. Very simple, well-known units. We enter them into UnitsPro. We put our reference data in. We go ahead and provide images so that these drawings are available to the field or the estimator throughout the process. We put an action. So install, remove, transfer, build those up as appropriate. We have our standard defaults. We're saying that this C1 is going to take 2 hours. There's no owner furnished material that we need to track. If we did, we could enter it in here. Materials that the work group provides, subcontracts that may have to be employed for this unit. So we take that reference data. We now assign that crew that we built. Here we're just saying this is a standard overhead distribution crew. And that parses down here and says, okay, for this unit now, this is what it's going to take, and here's the price. Again, this is reference. We can modify it later when we get into the design. Many organizations, owners, engineers don't work at that basic level. They work at a macro unit level. So here's a customer that works at a macro unit level, and we've loaded their macro units in. This particular customer has 82,000 unique macro units that we've loaded in, and then we map them back to these basic units, and then they roll back up to price the composite. So if we determine that our cross-arm single pricing is inappropriate, we can go back to that basic reference data, enhance it, and it will push through the system and update all of the composite units that use that. It's important to note here that on composite units, this mapping is static. When the owner specifies this macro unit, it's always the same. They're not changing the underlying component units. That's not true with other owners. They have a very dynamic mapping system. They go ahead and here's a substation book that we've mapped out a circuit switcher. Their 4.01 is the macro unit number from this owner, and we've mapped out all the basic units, but this is only for reference. So once we've built this, we go ahead and bring it into our designs where the estimator can go through and take a look and say, are all these being used? You can edit the quantities, delete subordinate units, add subordinate units, get it right. But again, make sure that we're starting from a point of reference that we've used historically, and what does it take to install this component. So once we've gone through the task of developing all the billable units and their constituent composite or assembly units, we're ready to do a takeoff. We go ahead and take the owner's documents and we enter them into UnitsPro. Now, this can be extremely tedious and it can be very error prone. We're taking the design from the owner or engineer and we're going to replicate it. Don't like that a lot. So what we've done in UnitsPro is we've developed a whole suite of tools that can take a basic job card from an owner and in seconds replicate it into UnitsPro where we can price it and amend it. If we have a job card on a per owner basis, we'll go ahead and create a PDF scraper that pulls that data out and puts it into UnitsPro. If it's the taking sheet we're provided with, we can untake that. So whatever we're provided with electronically, we can grab a hold of that and within seconds have it into UnitsPro. So we're not spending another 2, 3, 4 days trying to take the owner's documentation and make it our takeoff. So once we have these takeoffs put together, you can see I have some examples here of a substation, a transmission, and a distribution takeoff. We can go through and view what our planned hours are for each location. So our planned hours are showing up here, and this is very valuable for our field folks because what they're going to do now is they're going to use this as their beginning basis. They're going to go through and they're going to look at every one of the locations and they're going to factor the job or the locations or even an individual unit to get the hours that are required to execute this scope for them in the field. They also validate that takeoff. Very important is any temporary work. You have a road crossing on a transmission line installation. You need to put up guard structures. Go ahead and make a location for that. Add those guard structures in. Make sure that the work necessary to complete this installation is included in our takeoff and therefore in our estimate. So once we have our factoring done, there are several estimate reports available from UnitsPro that look at the estimate on an entire job basis, on a phase basis, on a unit basis, whatever is necessary for your organization to perform a detailed business review of the estimate and get it right. Next, one of the more tedious tasks is to create schedules and cash flows. And again, we've made that easy. Every single unit is associated with a phase code, and we can take those phase codes in our scheduling transaction and we can parse that work out on a weekly or daily basis. And once we've done that, now we've got a cash flow by week or by day, and we can go ahead and create work down curves. And we also have built numerous utilities to push that data automatically into third-party software packages like Microsoft Project. So here's a transmission project where this schedule came straight out of UnitsPro, and then we've got a utility in UnitsPro that you can use to push, and it will update each of these work breakdown structure elements or phase codes as appropriate. So with this all done, we've got ourselves everything we need to go begin executing this job. So now we want to move into our new time and production entry processes and systems. At UnitsPro, we're pleased to announce that we've commenced the rollout of our new time entry system. The new time entry system will allow a foreman to go through and manage his time for every day of the week for all of their assigned jobs. If you recall, currently a foreman has to go through and do a timesheet for each job
for each day. And the issue here has been that if a foreman, especially distribution work, is on multiple jobs in a day, different jobs during the week, then he may have to do 2 or 3 time entries for one single day if he's on that many jobs. And that's just too onerous and time consuming to do. So the new system is going to alleviate that, because we can come right on in here and say, this is the job that I'm working on first today, and then I've been told that I need to go over to this job later today. Select those and go. This is showing all of our in-process jobs. I can show the ones that are not yet started, and we can actually begin those jobs from here. If any jobs were on hold, there would be that selection option here, and the foreman could go in and select those and reactivate those jobs. Foreman also has the opportunity to access jobs for which are in the same region or for the same owner as set up in the system that they can assign themselves to. And then for some work groups, crews are allowed to periodically charge time for overhead activities such as safety stand downs and estimating. And if this is allowed and configured, this will be available. So we go back here, pick all your jobs at one time, and throughout the process you could add these jobs to as you learn about them. But to make this nice and easy, one pass through to do multiple jobs. Once we're done with that, we go next. It's going to go ahead and bring in the crew. The crew is going to be whatever that foreman's crew was yesterday. So any modifications or changes that were made yesterday are now reflected here in today's time. And we note that this groundman, he's not with us today, so we can go ahead and inactivate them. And if we inactivate them, we need to give a reason. And this individual is sick, so they're just off. That's not a permanent thing. If we marked permanent, then this groundman would be permanently removed or inactivated from this job, and therefore wouldn't be here tomorrow. We could also go through and add crew members. If we want to go ahead and add an apprentice here, we'll pick them up, and we could add them permanently or just temporarily. So again, we'll leave this as this is just a temporary add to pick up for that individual. Do the same thing with our equipment. We can inactivate it. We can add other equipment. There's some interactive features here where we can mark this as down for repair and send out reports to our equipment team to make sure that they have been notified that equipment is down. Also manage our rental equipment. Some of our work groups like to use UnitsPro to manage the rental equipment. So same thing here, we can add it, we can inactivate it, and that helps to keep track of that. Once this is done and we go next, we're going to go into our complete work or into the final time entry. We're going to go through the complete work next, but as soon as you do that, this information is now sent to the office. This crew roster is set for the day, and as a work group, if you're required to send the owner daily roster reports, you've just picked up the information from your crews to populate that report, and an administrative person can just compile that through a very slick little roster sheet transaction we have and run the report and send that off to the owner. So we're going to move into complete work in our next little segment here. When it comes to completing work, every work group has a different philosophy on who should complete the work, when it should be done. Some instances, the work group prefers that the foreman have nothing to do with completing work, that it be completed by the general foreman or the project manager or a units checker person. In other instances, they require that this be done as part of time entry, or perhaps the foreman does it on a periodic basis. In our scenario today, we have a transmission job and a distribution job. The transmission job is configured such that the foreman does not need to do production entry every day, but on the distribution job, they do. So here's our mobile Android app for complete work. It brings us into the job initially, shows us where we are, and it shows us all of our uncompleted work. If we scroll down, we can load our completed jobs, but initially those do not come in, just to make the app run quicker. we're going to update units on location 3. Open that up. This is the units that were pre-planned here. We can complete these one at a time, or we can use this button here to go through and complete multiples. And when we've completed the ones, or check the ones that are done, hit that. We can provide comments, which are optionals, and we're just going to complete those. So now those are completed. You can also uncomplete it, and if you long hold, it gives you the opportunity to complete it at a varying quantity. Inspector directed there to be 2, and there we go. So we completed 2. So that just initiated a change order into the system to pick those up for billing. Another thing that may be happening here is some of our owners like to participate with the work groups and do inspections. We do have an inspection module for the owner or a third-party inspection group, so that as soon as units are marked as complete by the work group, then they're sent to the inspector to be validated. Once the inspector validates them, they're sent forward within UnitsPro to billing. If they're rejected, they come back. They'll turn red in here with a message for the foreman to resolve. Another quick little element on complete work is it's pretty easy to add additional work. So we want to add an arrestor. I do not remember the spec number for the arrestor, so we'll just go ahead and type in arrest and see what comes back. And I'm pretty sure is this one here. These are all the old the new REA units, and I get a little messed up on which is which. So let's go take a look at that drawing, and we can get a hold of the drawings from the owner. We'll go ahead and load them in here to make it this easy for the work group to get their hands on them. Yep, that's the one we wanted. So we'll go ahead and go back, select it. Inspector, I could only type inspector directed, and we can add and complete or just add this. We'll go ahead and add and complete it, and it's going to go ahead and add that at the bottom here, and again it's going to process a change order. So we're completing work as we go and updating our earned values within the system, able to provide that back to the owner in several different formats and forms, or even push this information to their cost accounting system utilizing web services or APIs as is desired. And at this point, we've completed our production entry. In the next segment here, we'll go into our crew time entry and approval process. After we've performed our complete work transactions as required, we come into our crew time as the next step. Here we have the jobs that we earlier selected. At this point, we can add additional jobs or remove these jobs, manage these as necessary. It's also very important to note that in UnitsPro, we manage the time information at a 3-tier level. If we go ahead and open this up, we have a task for units task, and under that we have phase codes. So each owner requires different levels of detail for billing and reporting. An example here would be a storm job. We have several owners that require that for a storm job. We have a task for each and every storm ticket, and then for each storm ticket there are certain phase codes that they require the time be entered against. What they're really doing there is they're trying to differentiate between time and expense spent on maintenance work versus capital work to help determine how they do that split internally. These jobs are configured at the work group contract level where we can say this is the default. So obviously this is the simplest way to enter time is right here at this level. But we can also go through and take a look and have these things broke out at any level we want and report the time at these various levels. So right now we're just going to go with simple. We ended up working 6 hours and 4 hours. We could split up our ST and OT. If the contract allowed for DT, it would also be here. But we're just going to do time for the generic crew with the assumption that most of the people and most of the equipment on this crew is going to have the same time. So now that we come in here, here's our people and here's our time, and we can go ahead and modify the time by individual. We can administer their per diems, whether they get it or not. This is a configurable field. Some work groups prefer that their field people not see any per diem information. Others want them to be able to see it. And if we go down to this lineman, see no per diems again as we go down through here. So that's how this is set up. This individual is asking, hey, do you really want to add this guy permanently now? Because we only added him temporarily, so we can administer this and get it right. But let's assume that this is all good. We could add a member here. We can go through and zero out time if somebody really wasn't there. Or like I said, we can go modify this. So again, very quick to go through, validate that the time from the crew time to the individuals is as is appropriate. We'll go next, and we're going to bring in the equipment, and we're going to validate our equipment and spread our time there. And then once that's completed, we go next. It gives us a look where we can see what the time is for the day, and we can give it a look on a week basis. And with that, we've completed time entry. As soon as it's submitted, it goes to the review and approver, and once they've done their task, it proceeds to payroll, and we have the ability to accrue these costs for cost accrual reporting basis. A lot of information within UnitsPro, but wanted to give you a look at our new time entry. Thanks for viewing.